What's up, my Century Unit? It's the Sentiment here, so back again with another WCW pay-per-view review. Once again, in the month of July, I'm going to review some classic Great American Bash shows. So today I'm reviewing Great American Bash 1990. So this show was at the Baltimore Arena. Right now it's called the CFG Bank Arena in Baltimore, Maryland, on the 7th of July, 1990. So this show took place 3 days after the American Independence Day. The attendance of the show was 14,000. Great American Bash 1990 received about 200,000 pay-per-view buys, a good buy rate for the company at the time. The next Great American Bash show for the company with a good buy rate will be in 1998. I think that received about 293,000 pay-per-view buys. So the commentators for Great American Bash 1990, we got Jim Ross and Bob Caudle. So this show, Great American Bash 1990, is memorable for one match. Ric Flair versus Sting. This is the coronation of Sting winning his first world championship in his career. And also, this is the final Great American Bash show under the NWA banner, because the following year, that is just a solo WCW's Great American Bash show. I reviewed it last year on the channel. That was bad. That was known for, like, Ric Flair, no show. The show he was supposed to face Lex Luger. Unfortunately, he basically walked out of the company, took the World Heavyweight Championship with him, and go to the WWF, Anyway, like I said, go and watch my review of that show. That is just the drizzling shit. And I think, because the start of the next year, WCW kind of ceded away from the National Wrestling Alliance. I never knew that. Like, broke away from the NWA in 1991. I thought they broke away from the National Wrestling Alliance in 1993. Who knows? But anyway. And also we've got the debut of Big Fan Vader. I'll get to Vader's debut match later on in this review. So, a quick result of the dark match. So, the dark match, we got David Sierra. David Sierra, or David Cornell, is the Cuban assassin. Vidal Sierra, he is the cousin of Bill Alfonso. I think at the time, Bill Alfonso was a referee, soon to be the manager of RVD and Sabu in ECW. Defeated Mr. X in 10 minutes and 6 seconds. Mr. X, don't know who he is. He's a name called Randy Colley, who died in 2019 at the age of 69. He was assassin number one. I don't really know much about him. The name Mr. X. I'm all associating Mr. X as Action Man. He's the villain of Action Man. If you grew up knowing what his Action Man is, if you don't know what it is, look him up. I collect the figures. I like Action Man. They got the used to have the action figures. What's the show called Action Man back in? Well, I think that was late 90s, early 2000s. I think. Anyway, so let's talk about the first match to kick off Great American Bash 1990. So the first match to kick off Great American Bash 90, we got Flying Brian Pillman taking on the Nature Boy Buddy Landau. Buddy Landau is actually dressed up like Ric Flair, with the robe, the bleached blonde hair, and wow, it's just like mimicking another wrestler's gimmick. And I think he said this is not meant to be like ripping off, copying Ric Flair's gimmick, but it clearly is. Instead of doing the figure four leg lock, the match was good. But my only nitpick about this is just Buddy Landau. He was doing the same thing as Ric Flair. He does. I think he did the strutting. He did the cowardly, he kind of cowers away into the corner. That's something like Ric Flair would do. It just reminds a lot of people of Nature Boy Ric Flair, even though Buddy Rogers is the original Nature Boy, but people more associate with Ric Flair. But with Buddy Landau, he was. I think he was groomed or potentially going to be, he's going to be like the next star in professional wrestling, the upcoming talent, but for whatever reason, actually there was one reason, because he kind of got fired from the company in the 80s because he was a drug substance. He had problems with the IRS. No pun into Erwin I. Shyster. But anyway, this is his combat match in the company after years, outside of WCW, or back then it's JCP, that's Jim Crockett Promotions and the NWA. Anyway, he had a cup of coffee in UWF, not Herb Aben's company that is owned by Bill Watts and the American Wrestling Alliance, and he had a run in Japan. Anyway, try to keep it short and simple, but it was a fun match for what it is. It was good, I don't really do star ratings that much when I'm reviewing a show in wrestling. I give it probably 3 stars. It was fun for what it is. Brian Pillman hit a crossbody off the top rope onto Buddy Landel for the victory. Landel was a bit fat, comparing of Ric Flair and Buddy Landel. Ric Flair is a bit has a better body than Landel. Landel was fat, he was doing the muscling poses. I think he did the most muscular. He was doing not the front double bicep. He flexed one bicep and placed his other arm in the air. I call it the Olympian pose. It looks goofy because he's not that muscular. Buddy Landel, I think he was there for a cup of coffee, and then he ended up, it's really sad for him because he died in 2015 at the age of 53. I think he died in a car accident. Anyway, it's a shame. He did wrestle in the WWF later on in the 90s. He was more of an announcement talent, but not like a relevant guy on the roster. He's basically a jobber. So the next match, we got Captain Mike Rotunda, the future Erwin R. Shyster in the WWF, the dad of Bo Dallas and Bray Wyatt, taking on the Iron Sheik. Wow, Iron Sheik, the former WWF champion. He won the belt from Bob Backlund in 1983. My apologies. This was before the era of Hulk Hogan. I never knew he wrestled in WCW. He didn't stay in the company that long. He was there for a cup of coffee. I never knew that. It's very rare. Some wrestlers are known in WWF end up wrestling or showed up on NWA/WCW programming, like Bruno Sammartino, longest reigning WWE champion of all time, refereeing, I think it was a Thunderdome cage match at the first Halloween Havoc. It's very not odd, but wow, I never knew that. But anyway, Iron Sheik also was a WWF Tag Team Champion with Nikolai Volkov. This has got to be the worst match of the night and the weakest match of the night of the show, because Iron Sheik was really sad for him because he just recently passed away in our current timeline. He died last month at the age of 81. Anyway, so the match sucked. Iron Sheik was out of shape. He did he's doing the same thing from Buddy Landel earlier. He's doing the flexing. He did the Olympic pose. If you don't know what it is, basically you flex one bicep and place one arm in the air like an Olympian or some shit like that. But anyway, I give Mike Rotunda some props trying to carry Iron Sheik to a passable match. It's 6 minutes long, but it was kind of mediocre and getting getting crappy. In the end, Mike Rotunda rolled up the Iron Sheik with a crappy looking crucifix pin for the win. Yeah, like I said, Sheik didn't stay long in the WCW. He ended up going back to the WWF as Colonel Mustafa. He's part of Sergeant Slaughter's entourage when Slaughter became the Iraqi sympathizer. That would be in the following year in 1991. So, yeah, he was kind of there. So, let's move on to the next match. So, the next match, we got World's Strongest Man Doug Furnas taking on Dirty Dutch Mantel. Dutch Mantel is the future Uncle Sebekaya and the future Seb Coulter in WWE. Dutch Mantel, he's known for I think he was a booker, a producer, a manager, but this is the first Dutch Mantel match I covering on this channel. You know, I never knew he actually wrestled. I done my research that he wrestled in the 70s. You know, he debuted in 1972. I think that was after, you know, he served in the U.S. Army. He fought in the Vietnam War. Anyway, the match between him and Doug Furnas, I think it was a fun match. It was a good back and forth between Doug Furnas and Dutch Mantel. Doug Furnas, you know, the last Doug Furnas match I covered on this channel, I think it's one of the WWF Raws I covered in 1997, because last year I did the WWF in 1997, 25 years later arc. You know, go and check it out. I think he was. I didn't really had any, like, he didn't do nothing for me, because I think back in years later in 1997, you know, he was kind of like a enhancement talent. You know, he's not really relevant at the roster. You know, him and Phil LaFon. But you know, it wasn't at WCW that long. I think he was in Old Japan. I'll get to that shortly. Like I said, the match was good. But my only nitpick about this, it got a little bit boring. I wish they cut about 2-3 minutes off this match. But besides that, it was fun for what it is. Like, he picked up Dutch Mantel. Dutch Mantel was probably in his, I think he was in his 40s at the time. He can still go. I think with Doug Furnas, he's a bit younger. They both carried like a good passable match. You know, I'll give it like 3.5 stars. He kind of picked up Dutch Mantel, you know, hyping like Doug Furnas is the world's strongest man. People associate Mark Henry being the world's strongest man, but Doug Furnas, I've done my research that he's actually not a strong man, but he had put like records. You know, he had a record in the deadlift and the squats. You know, yeah, I gonna look it up. Anyway, so in the end, Furnas hit the belly to belly suplex onto Dutch Mantel for the win. Yeah, it's good to see Dutch Mantel wrestle, because it's the only match, you know, because I don't think he wrestled that much. I think he ended up retiring, becoming a producer, a manager in later companies like in WCW and then in WWF, you know, and other wrestling companies and territories. In this match, you know, he looks good. Not saying he was kind of past his best, but I think him and Furnas kind of carried to a passable match. So moving on to the next match, we got Harley Race taking on, you know, the King Harley Race, because his nickname is the King. You know, he's the 8-time NWA World Champion, taking on Wildfire Tommy Rich. This is a rivalry going back 9 years earlier. If you don't know this, I didn't know that either. Tommy Rich, you know, was an NWA World Champion. He defeated Harley Race in 1981 for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Yeah, Harley Race won back the title a month later. I think Rich won the belt in April. Race won the belt back in May. So this match, you know, both guys were past his best. You know, Harley Race has got to be, you know, I think it was in his he was in his I think he was in his 40s at the time. Or late, I think it was in his late 40s. So he's got to be in his mid to late 40s at the time. Tommy Rich was got to be in his mid 30s. You know, he's not quite a spring chicken Tommy Rich, but I think him and Ray kind of carried to a passable good match. I give it 3 stars, decent match. I like the physicality. I don't really call it mediocre, you know, but for me it was fun for what it is. In the end, Tommy Rich was going for like a move off the top rope. Race counted into a roll. I think he counted with a roll up after Rich hit the cross body for the win. So it's a good win for Harley Race. I forgot to mention this is Harley Race's first match back in the company, because he spent most of the time outside the NWA. Right now it's WCW, because he spent most of the time, you know, he spent most of his career throughout the 80s and 90s in Puerto Rico. He had to run in the WWF, you know, he was the King. Anyway, this is his first match back as a wrestler. He ended up retired later on. I think it was later on in the 90s, become a manager Vader. Anyway, but besides that, good match. So moving on to the next match. I also forgot to mention this. You know, when, Doug Furnas went on to go back to. I think he ended up going back to All Japan, teaming up with Dan Kroffat. Dan Kroffat is Phil LaVon, and they had one of the matches of the year in All Japan. That will be in 1992. Sorry, folks, I forgot to mention that. Anyway, so the next match. This is for the NWA United States Tag Team Championships. The Midnight Express, that is beautiful Bobby Eaton, sweet Stan Lane with Jim Cornette in their corner, defending the belts against the Wild Eye Southern Boys. That is Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers. Steve Armstrong is one of the brothers of Road Dogg Jesse James. This was a really good match. I really enjoy about this match. It was a good back and forth. It was nearly 20 minutes. There's good chemistry between the both tag teams, the Midnight Express and the Wild Eye Southern Boys. They'll soon become the Young Pistols. Anyway, so the ending was a bit disappointed, a bit odd. You know, like one of the Southern Boys. You know, first off, here's the thing. Like one of the members of the Midnight Express, I think it was Bobby Eaton or Stan Lane, rolled up one of the members of the Southern Boys. That's Tracy Smothers or Steve Armstrong, one of them, and one of them kind of counted it, you know, and the referee did a freak out, and the ring announcer says, "Here's your winners," and still the United States Tag Team Champions, the Midnight Expresses. You know, in my own eye, that wait a minute, you know, the Southern Boys. One of them counted the small package attempt. So basically, clearly, the Southern Boys won this match and the tag team titles. Unfortunately, no, that's not the case. You know, that really got caught me off guard. I like Jim Cornette in this match. You know, he's yelling at the cameraman. You know, he's in his way. Anyway, but it was a really good match. You know, while the Southern Boys, you know, or the Young Pistols, a very underrated tag team at the time, not really mentioned, you know, not in the history of tag teams in professional wrestling over the years, whether it's in the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and the current timeline. People, like, don't really mention the Southern Boys, Steve Armstrong and Tracy Smothers, you know. Tracy Smothers, you know, people know him part of the FBI in the ECW years later. The Southern Boys / Young Pistols went on to win the United States Tag Team Championships the following year in 1991 against Chip and Todd Champion. That was in 1991. You know, they did win on to win some tag team gold in their time as a tag team. I think Steve Armstrong, I think it's Steve or Brad. One of them ended up like staying in WCW throughout the 90s. I think Brad Armstrong is Bad Street. You know, that's another story for another time. But besides that, I think I give it number 2. This is gonna be the number 2 best match of the night, alongside the main event. We'll get to the main event later on in this review. So moving on to the next match. So we got the debut of Big Van Vader taking on the Z-Man Tom Zenk. Vader, you know, this is his first WCW pay-per-view appearance. He came from New Japan. You know, he had a great career in New Japan. I think he became a 3-time IWGP World Champion. He was a tag team champion with Bam Bam Bigelow. In this match, you know, he came out with a cool looking helmet. You know, it like puffs out smoke. The helmet, you know, it looks like a mixture of Darth Vader and Shredder. You know, Shredder is the main villain of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I kind of like it. The mask, not so much. He ended up changing his mask later on in his career. Anyway, this is just a squash match. You know, I'm not going to put it in the bad when I do my overall rating of this show. Anyway, but it was a good to see Vader, you know, showcase what he can do. In the end, he hit Tom Zenk with the it was a patent splash in the ring for the victory. So it's a good win for Vader to kick off his run in WCW. So moving on to the next match. We got the Steiners. That is Rick and Scott Steiner taking on the Fabulous Freebirds. That is Michael P.S. Hayes, the future Doc Hendricks in WWF, and Jimmy Jam Garvin. So the Steiners lost the tag team titles to Doom. I'll get to Doom's match later on in this review. And they were part of Dudes of Attitude. I also will get to Dudes of Attitude because Doom and Dudes of Attitude are in this match on this show. I'll get to their matches later on in this review. Anyway, this match was good. I really enjoyed this match. This is the second place. This is not on the same level as the US Tag Team title match between Midnight Express and the Southern Boys, but this is a second place. Good chemistry between the Steiners and the Freebirds, you know. I didn't really hear. I heard I watched before making this video of this show. I watched on other person's review of the show. They were mentioning that they were chanting, the fans at the Baltimore Arena chanting "faggot." You know, towards the two members of the Fabulous Freebirds. You know, they're never gonna see. You're not gonna see or hear a wrestling fan chant "faggot" towards a wrestler in today's wrestling product, whether it's WWE or AEW, because people get offensive anyway. So, and also you had Rick Steiner chanting towards Michael. Michael is a bitch, you know, not on the same level as Eric Cartman singing "Kyle's mom's a bitch," you know. But anyway, yeah, you can get in the fans joining of chanting "Michael is a bitch," referring to Michael P.S. Hayes. In the end, the Steiners got the victory. Scott hit the Frankensteiner onto, I think it was on Michael P.S. Hayes. Then Jimmy Garvin hit the DDT onto Scott Steiner. And then the referee informed Jimmy Garvin that you're not the illegal man. So I think Steiner clothesline Garvin, and I think Scott pins Michael P.S. Hayes for the win. Right call, because Steiner's just lost the tag team titles to Doom. So let's move on to the next match. The Freebirds went on to feud with the Wild Eye Southern Boys. That'll be at the Fall Brawl Clash of the Champions show in September, I think. So, and I think and also throughout 1990, I'm not too sure, because I just reboot the Clash of the Champions shows review. Clash 2 review will be very soon. Stay tuned. So moving on to, this is a 6-man tag team match. We got the Dudes of Attitude. That is Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff, the Junkyard Dog, and El Gigante, his first WCW pay-per-view match. He debuted at Catapult Combat in May. El Gigante is the future Giant Gonzalez in WWF, taking on three members of the Four Horsemen. That is the Enforcer, Arn Anderson, Barry Windham, and Sid Vicious. So Sid joined the Four Horsemen after the Horsemen kicked Sting out of the group. I'll get more of that Sting part of the Horsemen when I get to the main event. Due to Attitude, they had Paul Orndorff, JYD, El Gigante, and also they had I think they had the Steiners in that group to face off to tackle the Horsemen. Anyway, the match was okay for what it is. The only bright spot, there is no El Gigante wrestle in this match, you know, because he is shit. I don't know why they signed him. I think Jim Ross bring up his country, you know, they're in the World Cup final, because at the time, Italia 90, or the World Cup of 1990 was still going at the time. It was nearly the final of that World Cup. And spoiler alert, Argentina lost to West Germany 1-0. Anyway, the match was okay. Sid was fine. Orndorff was, I think, in his 40s. He was past his best, but he did show up a good, passable match. You know, the match is not really like a barn burner. it's not going to be like a 4-5 star classic, but at the same time, it's not. It's not. It was kind of like kind of mediocre. It was just kind of there. In the end, one of the Horsemen members, I think they kind of thrown JID. I think it was JID over the top rope. That is an automatic disqualification. I hate that rule. I'm glad they didn't bring it back in any wrestling capacity, whether it's in WWE or AEW or Impact Wrestling or ROH. You know, it's a stupid rule of a wrestler getting disqualified. I thought it was just a Bill Watts rule, but no, they've been doing it earlier than Bill Watts. But anyway, kind of there, not terrible, not great. You know, I put it in. I'll give it 2 stars. I forgot to mention this. JYD recently, I think in this certain time period, did challenge Ric Flair for the World Heavyweight Championship. I think he fought Ric Flair in the Clash of the Champions show. I think it was like June or something. I'm not too sure. We'll get to those 1990 Great American Bash shows in the future. So moving on to the next match. This is the I think this is let's see 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the second of 4 championship matches on the show, and this is for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. Lex Luger, the total package, taking on Mean Mark Calaway, the future Undertaker, Mark Calaway, with Paulie Dangerously in the corner of Mean Mark. Paulie Dangerously, aka Paul Heyman. This is the only time that Mark Calaway and Lex Luger fought one-on-one in the ring in any wrestling capacity, because they never fought in WWF when Luger came in the company in 1993, whether it's the Narcissist or good old USA Lex Express Lex Luger, you know, the heir of Hulk Hogan's throne. Anyway, but yeah, I don't think they fought one-on-one in any capacity in WWF. This has got to be the one and only match they fought you know, in their careers. Seeing like Paul Heyman managing The Undertaker, you know, Mark Calaway, you know, they never bring up their history in later years when they both were in WWE, you know, in the mid-2000s and the 2010s when Undertaker was feuding with Brock Lesnar. Anyway, I think it was a good match. Good match. It's the same. This is same as the Dutch Mantel Doug Furnas match. You know, I wish they cut minutes off this match. It was getting, some parts was getting a little bit boring. You know, this was 12 minutes, you know, because the Doug Furnas Dutch Mantel match was about 11 minutes. You know, I wish they cut about 2 or 3 minutes off this, or off those matches, you know, to make the match flow a bit okay. But it flows okay, or it'd flow a bit better if they don't wrestle like a bit longer. I think it's getting restless and boring. Anyway, Mark Calaway or Mark Calaway, the future Undertaker, he came out. He had a bland look. You know, he ended up wearing a vest, trunks. You know, it's just like not a good look for him. Anyway, in the end, Luger, you know, I think Mean Mark was going for the heart punch. That is a crap move. Anyway, it's basically you have to punch someone in the heart, you know, in the chest. In the end, Luger hit Mean Mark with, I think it was a clothesline or a forearm for the win, instead of locking Mean Mark with the torture rack. You know, he ended up using the bionic forearm in his run in WWF later on in the 90s, but back then, I think it's for the best, man. I feel like it really like protect Mean Mark. You know, if Mean Mark taps out, that is a bit weak. Anyway, I think if Mean Mark wins this match on this show, that would be a bit pointless and dumb. You know, I feel like he's just, like I said, I'm not no disrespect with Mean Mark Calaway. In his run in WCW, he did team up with Dan, what was it called, Dave Spivey or Dan Spivey, the future Waylon Mercy in WWF, part of the Skyscrapers. You know, he's just got a bland look. I think it's a right call to have Luger retain the United States title on the show. And this was the final WCW pay-per-view appearance for Mean Mark Calaway, because in October he got signed by the World Wrestling Federation. he became The Undertaker. He debuted at Survivor Series that year, and the rest itself is history. So moving on to the next match. This is for the NWA World Tag Team Championships. We got Doom, the team of Ron Simmons, the future Farouk, part of the Nation of Domination, and also part of the APA Acolytes with Bradshaw. That'll be later on in the 90s in wrestling. Teaming up with his tag team partner Butch Reed, defending the belts against the Rock and Roll Express. Also, you got Theodore R. Long, there's their manager at the time, Teddy Long, Theodore Long, future SmackDown GM, Holla player. Like I said, defending the belts against the Rock and Roll Express. That is Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. Doom won the NWA World Tag Team Championships at Capital Combat in May against the Steiner Brothers. This is the one and only reign for Doom as the NWA Tag Team Champions. Like I said, won the belts in May, because the following year Doom split up. Ron Simmons, pursuit in the world title picture, went on to become the world champion in 1992. The match was good. It's basically speed versus strength, but this is similar to Dutch Mantel, Doug Furnas, Lex Luger versus Mean Mark. It's a bit boring, I wish this match cut about minutes off this match, but it was getting a little bit boring for me in my taste. But I think this is the weakest. This is the weakest tag team match on this show. I place it number 3. Number 1 has to be the United States tag team title match between Midnight Express versus the Southern Boys. Second place, the Steiners versus the Freebirds. This match between Doom versus the Rock and Roll Express, that takes the 3rd place. In the end, Butch Reed hit I think it was a flying tackle off the top rope onto, I think it was Robert Gibson or Ricky Morton for the win. Makes the right call, because Doom just won the tag team titles from the Steiners at Cannibal Combat in May. Makes no sense them dropping the belts on this show. This was the last time that the Rock and Roll Express teamed up. They teamed up later on. I think they were part of the WWF, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Anyway, because the reason why this is the last tag team match for them, because I think Robert Gibson got hurt. He injured his knee, and then the following year the Rock and Roll Express broke up because Ricky Morton turned on Robert Gibson to join the York Foundation. It became Richard Morton. That's another story for another time. So moving on to the main event. I forgot to mention this. I like the poster. Actually, I'll get to that shortly. So the main event, this is for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The Nature Boy Ric Flair defending the belt against Sting. So I like the poster. I like between Ric Flair and Sting. I checked the Wikipedia page for the show. You got the DVD, not DVD, but the VHS cover of the show, but I don't like that. But I choose this picture instead. I forgot to mention the intro. The intro I like. You had Ric Flair's head and Sting's head onto pictures of soldiers who fought in the American Revolution War. That was good. I really liked that. I wish the show wasn't in Baltimore. I wish they did it in, I don't know. I think it's part of the, I don't know if that was part of the American Revolution War or part of the Civil War. I'm not 100% sure. I wish they'd done it in, it's very funny that Capital Combat was in Washington DC. This show is in Baltimore. In my opinion, I wish they just did the Great American Bash in the American capital, Washington, and Cannibal Combat in Baltimore. I don't mind it in Philadelphia, because Philadelphia was the place that America got their independence. That's just me, but anyway, so here's why it's very funny, the last Ric Flair Sting match I cover was at the first Clash of the Champions show, and that really put Sting on the map. So why they've been feuding? So it started in February. It started in late 1989. Sting, I think he won like a number one contendership. It's a bit of a tongue twisting moment. Sting won the number one contendership in late '89. He ended up joining the Horsemen. Then at the Clash of the Champions show in February, the Horsemen and Flair turned heel, turned on Sting, and kicked Sting out of the group because Sting wants to challenge the world champion. And this is backstage rumor that Ric Flair promised Sting he will drop the World Heavyweight Championship to him, because at this moment in time, Flair was feuding with Jim Herd, because Jim Herd wants to bury the fuck out of Ric Flair, trying to face Ric Flair out of the main event scene, stop him becoming the Nature Boy, trying to make him as Spartacus, and that was one of the reasons, or many of the reasons, why Flair walked out of the company the following year. Anyway, so the Horsemen kicked Sting out of the group. Then on the same night, then Sting kicked out of the Horsemen. He injured his knee in the process in like a post brawl. He's trying to climb the cage. I think for whatever reason he torn his knees, torn his patella. So that's kind of kiboshed the original plan. It's kind of. I used the quote loosely. Anyway, so Flair won the belt like last year at Wrestle War, a show I reviewed last year on this channel, Wrestle War '89, against Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in their series of matches. Flair turning heel was the right call because he turned babyface in '89. He was feuding with Terry Funk. This was after his feud with Terry Funk came to an end. Anyway, so it's basically a reset button, because you need a top heel in the company. Flair is the guy. Anyway, so Sting formed the Dudes of Attitude. That's him, JYD, the Steiners, and Paul Orndorff. To be honest, and Sid joined the Horsemen. Makes no sense, and I don't know why Sting's joining the Horsemen. He doesn't really fit the group pretty damn well. Paul Orndorff fits the Horsemen pretty damn well. I don't understand why he's not part of the group. It's like in my last review of King of the Ring '98. I said Owen doesn't really fit the Nation of Domination pretty damn well because he doesn't. Because he was not really, he was part of the group, but he doesn't really fit the group pretty damn well. He turned on Ken Shamrock. He turned on X-Pac, and also he ended up feuding with Ken Shamrock, but he didn't really fit the vibe of the group. But same as Sid Vicious, he doesn't really fit the group, because I'm guessing he's trying to be like the substitute of Lex Luger because he's big and muscular and he's super tall, but he didn't really fit the group pretty damn well. Anyway, the stipulation in this match, Ollie Anderson, he was the manager of the Horsemen because, he was filling in for J.J. Dillon because J.J. Dillon left he left WCW, he ended up going to the WWF. He came back in the company in 1997. Part of it, he was the community of WCW. That was in like 1997 time in WCW in the Monday Night War era. Anyway, so the stipulation that Ollie Anderson must be handcuffed to El Gigante. Every time they do the stipulation that someone needs to go in the shark tank or get handcuffed, they always find a way to interfere. But in this match, not so much. This match between Sting and Flair, this was, I'm going to call it match of the night. Match of the night. I think Flair and Sting had some good chemistry. Flair worked on the repair knee of Sting. I don't think Flair locked in the figure four leg lock throughout the match. Sting locked his version of the figure four leg lock, but Flair reached the ropes. Sting locked in the Scorpion Deathlock. Once again, Flair reached the ropes. It was good back and forth, and also Sting was stinging up. Every time Flair, doing the chops, Sting was not selling the chops of Ric Flair. You got the Horsemen trying to interfere, coming down to the ring, and then you got the Dudes of Attitude fighting and fend off the Horsemen. I don't know why they're there. It was just like setting up the scores, stopping Horseman's bullshit to help Ric Flair retain the world title. In the end, Flair was going for the figure 4 leg lock, but instead Sting counted into the small package to win this match and become the world champion for the first time. I think it's the first of 12 championships he won in his career. He won the WCW world title. I think he won 4 times. Until WCW went out of business, he won 4 more times in TNA a decade later in the mid 2000s. So he's won 12. He's won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship twice. I think he won the WCW World Heavyweight Championship, I think it was 4 times, 4 times, 3 or 4 times. And the TNA World Title, I think it was 4 times. I'm not too sure, man. I don't want to do my math on this show, so it was a good decision, and I think if Flair didn't drop the belt on the show to Sting, that would be bad business, but it was the right call. It's very funny, the Blade Runners won the world titles throughout 1990, because the reason why I say Blade Runners, because of the team of Jim Hellwig and Steve Borden. Steve Borden and Jim Hellwig become the Ultimate Warrior and Sting, because Jim Hellwig, the Ultimate Warrior, at this time is the WWF World Champion, and now Sting's just won the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. So it's a good feeling, if you're fans of both guys. Sting Sting to this day has got to be the most popular wrestlers, or top 10 popular wrestlers out there. And also I like on this show, in the main event, Sting came out with the American flag face paint, and just looked like the American flag colors, the red, the white, and the blue. And I feel it really inspires Cody, with that look. If you see Cody Rhodes right now, when he's the American Nightmare, bleached blonde hair, without the face paint, just with the American colors, both are it looks like, Homelander before Homelander. People were really comparing Cody Rhodes to Homelander. That's a show called The Boys. It's also based on the comics. I think it was a right call to have Sting winning the World Heavyweight Championship. He was young at the time. You could say at this moment in time, Sting has got to be the top babyface of that company at the time. Warrior's the top babyface in the WWF. Sting is the top babyface in WCW. So seeing both guys holding world championships, even though their time in the sun was brief, Sting ended up feuding with the Black Scorpion later on in the year. That is, I don't want to talk about that. That's a future review of it for another time. Flair went on to win back the world title later at the end of 1990, and then he held the belt until he left the company the following year in 1991. So, but the 1991 Great American Bash Show was shit. This was fucking good, man. I think everyone's happy. People leave the Baltimore arena happy seeing Sting winning the belt. So yeah, it was a good way to end the 1990 Great American Bash Show. Anyway, my final overall rating of Great American Bash 1990, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. This is good. I'm going to say this is way fucking better than Great American Bash 1991. The 1991 Great American Bash was the drizzling shits, because Flair walked out of the company. It kind of tainted Lex Luger's world title victory. That was, people say it was too little too late, but that was just overshadowing. He had bad matches, but this was good. This is like night and day. This is like a good, positive opposite. It started out fun with the opener, Pillman versus Landau, and ends well with Sting versus Flair for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. The only thing in the bad for me has to be Mike Rotunda versus the Iron Sheik. The only match in the okay for me has to be the 6-man tag team match, the Horsemen versus the Dudes with Attitude. Besides that, other matches, the undercard was fucking strong. I like the 3 tag team matches on the show. The United States tag team title match, the NWA tag team title match, even though it was a bit weaker. Steiner versus Freebirds, Undertaker versus not Undertaker, Luger versus Mean Mark Caloris. You know, he also became the Undertaker, by the way. That was good. That was decent. Dutch Mantel versus Doug Vinners was fun. Harley Race versus Tom Rich, like I said, fun. Yeah, I give it 9 out of 10. I suggest watching Great American Bash. You know, it's a really fun show. Seeing, for good, like, this show is memorable for, technically it's the one match, Sting versus Flair, but also you got the debut of Vader, my apologies, I'm speaking too fast, but seeing, like, future stars, they're going to be future stars in wrestling later on in the 90s and beyond, so. Anyway, that's my review of Great American Bash 1990. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. What's your thoughts on the 1990 Great American Bash? Smash the like button, click the like, click the bell, subscribe to the Central Man Network on YouTube. Be part of the Central Unit for more wrestling videos and more. Next time, let's go 2 years into the future. This time, Sting as the World Champion. This time, taking on Big Fan Vader. Also, on that same show, you had the tournament to crown I think it was for the NWA World Heavyweight or the World Tag Team Champion. You know, see how the 1992 Great American Bash show lived up the hype. You know, is it going to be a good show, a bad show, or in the middle? Who knows? You gotta wait until you find out. Until next time. So, until then, this is the Central Man officially signing out. Check you later. And that's my review of the 1990 Great American Bash.